This is the second generation Audi Q3, the sequel to the first gen that launched back in 2011, which was a simpler time. A time when terms like compact SUV and crossover SUV were quirky, rather than staples of the new car market like they are now. And one thing's for sure, the latest model certainly looks more interesting. It's like the designers have grabbed a sketch of the first gen model, thrown it into an 8-bit cartoon, sketched over the lines, and then gone, yep, that'll do. But it works. I mean, what we get is a much more aggressive, much more muscular design with lines running all over it, and it will help it stand out from its BMW, Jaguar, Range Rover and Volvo competition. As will this pulse orange paint job. And how orange is it, you may ask? Well, yeah, 575 quid that costs. The paint job, not the orange. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the SUV market has changed massively since the Q3 first launched, and arguably the biggest shift is the expectation level. Nowadays, when people buy a small, stylish SUV, they expect it to be able to do everything and offer everything. The question is, has the Q3 been able to keep up with the times? Well, one of the first things you usually notice with an Audi is its impressive technology, and the Q3 is no different. The dashboard is dominated by Audi's virtual cockpit design. You've got a massive touchscreen here and TFT screen behind the steering wheel, and yeah, everything just feels very chiseled, well thought out, high quality, and well, very German. There are, however, a few design features that disappointed me a bit quality-wise, especially lower down. As your eyes move below the steering wheel, you see this large plastic space here, and then below it this design that, I don't know, looks like it should be metal, but it's not. It's plastic. And then there's the controls on the steering wheel, which, yeah, they just make a really cheap click. I mean, these might sound like really minor things, but people buy Audis to avoid little nuisances like this. But let's not focus on that, because this interior is lovely. And this is actually the standard sport model we've got. So those screens I mentioned earlier, they come as standard, as does sat-nav, rear parking sensors, dual zone climate control and cruise control, but not heated seats, which I was a bit surprised at. But the main draw in here is, without doubt, these two screens. I mean, not only do they look great, but they are fully customizable, and they just make the entire driving experience more fun. Now, let's talk about that Alcantara trim, shall we? Well, it's a £375 option. It's not something I'd choose personally. Wouldn't want to leave a window open and get it wet, but it is worth noting that that kind of personalisation is available. Now, apart from kit and style, practicality in here is pretty good, especially these door bins. These door bins are absolutely huge. Underarm storage here, not as impressive, but still okay. Same goes for the glove box. But one thing I really like in here is the fact that you get two different USB ports down here for connecting and charging. Now, one of the biggest gripes with small SUVs is that head and leg room in the rear becomes somewhat of an afterthought, as does boot space, but the Q3 laughs this off with loads of leg room, as you can see, and tons of headroom as well, and it just feels nice and airy back here, like an SUV should. I also like the fact that you get large door bins back here, just like the front, and I also like the fact that these seats are nice and flexible. They slide back and forth. They also recline backwards, which is always a nice feature to have. Now, although our model doesn't come with a fold-down armrest, some higher models do, we can split these seats right in the middle and effectively use this as an armrest if you really wanted to. Now, although there is a large transmission tunnel in here, climbing around's not that difficult, and once you actually sit in the middle seat, yeah, it's very easy to get comfortable with your legs left and right of it. It doesn't take up that much space. So yeah, all in all, pretty good in the back. Now, the boot is another area where the Q3 impresses, and yes, the Q3 may sit on the same platform as the next generation A3 hatchback, but you wouldn't think it by looking at its boot, and it's the little things that make the difference, like this low load lift with a nice hard-wearing scuff plate here, an adjustable boot floor which can lock in place like this, and some little hooks dotted around for shopping. But it's a spacious boot as well. I mean, with the seats in place, there's up to 675 litres of storage space, and like I was showing you earlier, those seats slide back and forth to allow for a bit of extra flexibility, and they almost fold completely flat to allow for over 1,500 litres of storage space. I mean, that's estate size. Now, one slight issue with all of this, and it is only a slightly minor thing, is that when you want to fold these seats down, you've got to come round to the back seats and pull these little ropes here. I mean, it's not the end of the world, it's just a lot of cheaper models do it better. So, pay no attention to the 40 TDI on the back of the Q3, it will likely just confuse you. Just know that we are testing the 2-litre 190 horsepower diesel model mated to the S-Tronic automatic gearbox, and as this is the more powerful diesel option in the range, you do get a nice bubble of power when you put your foot down. It's quite fun for a diesel anyway. And the 190 horsepower diesel also comes with Quattro 4-wheel drive as standard. What I will say is, don't be too quick to judge this S-Tronic automatic. I mean, if you just drive it exclusively in the city, for example, in stop-start traffic, it will get on your nerves. I mean, it is quite hesitant to move off when stationary, like a lot of autos, to be honest. But once you get up to speed, it rifles through the gears effortlessly and actually matches this diesel really well. Now, this diesel does have a bit of a hum to it, but it's not a huge issue, and refinement all round in the Q3 is really impressive. Now, fuel economy wise, Audi claims an average of around 39 miles per gallon, which is achievable. In fact, you probably achieve slightly higher than that if you do a lot of motorway driving. And with CO2 of 146 grams per kilometre, you're looking at a 37% BAK tax rate for 2019 and 2020. But does the Q3 offer the boring, mundane, numbing drive of many other small SUVs? Well, no, I wouldn't say that. I mean, it's not distinctly entertaining to drive, but it does have a bit of personality. It's just sporty enough to have a little bit of fun, if you really want to. For example, the steering is really light and easy to use, but it is progressive, which basically means that when cornering, you'll find yourself turning slightly less than you usually would to complete a manoeuvre, and this comes in really handy on twisty country roads like this. And overall, feedback through the steering wheel is really good. It does noticeably come alive once you move the steering wheel off centre. And the ride's of a similar ilk as well. It's not overly stiff or overly spongy, but it can tackle corners confidently, and most importantly for some, the Q3 does feel like a road domineering SUV, especially if you jack the seat up to a higher ride height. And the Q3 is actually available with an adaptive suspension for £950, which we've got in our model. And this gives you the likes of comfort mode for a softer ride and dynamic mode for a stiffer ride, but honestly, you're only really going to benefit from this if you plan on taking corners at significant speeds and you want the car to feel a bit more planted. But with the Q3 being designed with comfort in mind, I'd just stick with the standard suspension setup. Now, there's no avoiding that the Q3 is quite expensive when compared to its rivals, with a starting price of around £30,000. That is quite expensive for a small SUV, isn't it? So, considering it belongs to a segment flooded with cheaper alternatives with less posh badges, the big question is, does the Q3 feel special enough to warrant that bigger price tag? Well, yeah, just about I'd say, but it doesn't hit it out the park in terms of quality. So if you're after that quintessential over-the-top German luxury, you might be a bit disappointed. The big attraction really with the Q3 is its relaxed drive and tech-heavy interior. But its practicality shouldn't be underestimated. If you're more concerned with bang for your buck, however, well, chances are you wouldn't be watching this video.